All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. And we've been saying it for a while. The one glaring need that the Avalanche were going to need to address this offseason, they didn't even wait till free agency opened up to address that need. Avalanche make a pretty big splash in the trade market. We're going to talk about that and a lot of other stuff to get to on this Monday episode of Locked On Avalanche.
Your Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in and making it your first listen of the day. That's always appreciated. Make sure to follow us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, Locked On Avalanche on Instagram. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us over on our YouTube channel. Subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and definitely subscribe to our subtext. Link to that is in the show notes below. Subscribe and chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. All right, Kyle, we got our rundown over on YouTube. We're going to get to the NHL's decision to eliminate special warm-up jerseys, which they did that late last week. The preseason schedule was announced for the Colorado Avs. We will also get to that. But of course, we are going to start with the big deal that they made over the weekend. It was the probably the glaring need for the Avs in addressing the 2C situation. And they go out and trade with division rival Nashville to bring in Ryan Johansen. Nashville keeps 50% of his salary, so the Avs are only paying $4 million for him for the next 2 years. And all they had to give up was Alex Galchenyuk. I mean, everything about this favors the Avalanche, and I get why Nashville is doing it. They weren't in this deal to try to win it. They're clearly trying to eliminate a contract, and they did it. So if they want to feel like they won, then sure, if you want to free up some cap space. But for the Avalanche side of things, to address the glaring need, there's other things that they have to do, clearly. But this was the one. And we were talking, like, how are they going to do this? Or, free agency is a little bit thin. They're probably going to go the trade route. The trade, maybe it's going to have to include someone like Sam Girard. The Avs get out of this thing basically scot-free. And man, if people had some questions on how Chris MacFarland can deal, this is a feather in his cap right now.
Yeah, as an Avalanche fan, you have to feel very confident in this offseason with how this, let's just say, the first official move has gone. Because you mentioned they gave up Alex Galchenyuk. They gave up the signing rights to Alex Galchenyuk.
Because he's an unrestricted free agent. Right, exactly. So they gave up nothing, basically.
This is nothing, and told Nashville pay 50% of that $8 million contract that Ryjo is currently holding. So they're paying $4 million for the next 2 years for Ryan Johansen, who has played for a little over a decade, has had 5 over 60-point seasons. Mm-hmm. So as a 2C, magical. That's exactly. And we can kind of, this is the Nazem Kadri equivalent when it comes to production. Yes, I know health is an issue. Welcome to the Avalanche. We will love you here.
All right.
That's how last year went for him, but his production is going to be exactly what you want out of your 2C. And then we talk about it all the time. All the everydayers know we can sprinkle on this. Once they get with this Avalanche team, they're going to be so good. You could do that with Ryan Johansen.
Absolutely. I think this is, there's a small smattering of people saying like, oh, is this going to be their 2C? It's like, well, if it is, I'm completely happy with that. And I think, the final year for Kadri in Colorado maybe gave people like this false sense of what a 2C honestly gives you. That was an incredible season by him, which far exceeded any other season that he's ever had, probably exceeded his expectations.
Yeah.
And it's just not feasible to think that you're going to get that kind of numbers out of your 2C. What Ryan Johansen does is exactly what you just said. Like the numbers he puts up consistently when he's healthy, obviously, are what you are looking for in a 2C. Now, I don't think this means that the Avalanche are completely done. Like they will always see what's out there to try to make their team better. And you're hearing now that they still want to, like, this doesn't mean like JT Compher is gone. They still want to bring him in. And again, if they do sign him, I think there's going to be some people like, oh, there's going to be a battle for 2C. I don't see that happening. If JT Compher does sign, JT Compher is your 3C, and you have now a solid center core between your first, second, and third lines. And if you don't sign JT Compher, then you have to go out and figure that out. And it doesn't mean that that Johansen has the 2C locked up if Compher's gone. If Compher comes in, I think he does. If Compher's gone, they will still see what's out there, and they could still bring in someone that is better than Ryan Johansen. And then now you're telling me Ryan Johansen could be your 3C, and now you're even better. So this just sets up the Avalanche for whatever moves come next. They're good. And if he ends up being that 2C, which I think right now we all anticipate him being, you can't tell me this is not an upgrade for the Avalanche. You can't sit here and say that this is not a good move and not an upgrade for the Avs. They are better now for what they have signed than they were last year at any point in the 2C position.
Basically, what this does, you could scrub last year away. You remember the 2C competition we had last year? Mm. Well, now we have a viable horse here with Ryjo and what he could contribute. And now before the season even started, we went ahead and announced Gabriel Landeskog is not playing a single game in 23-24. That is that contract on LTIR. We now know. We can now play with that money. Mm-hmm. We can address maybe additional defense, maybe some more horses in the stable for the third and fourth line.
Yeah.
But if they do, I know there's been a lot of talk with Chicago and JT Compher. We'll find out what happens when we wake up the next day, if that's even going to happen. But if JT Compher comes in, there's your 3C. If he wants to be 2C, that's what training camp's for. Get in there and prove yourself. But this gives you more optimism going to this year than you did last year when it came to, is it Newhook? Is it JT Compher? Is it Erod? 2 of those 3 names aren't here right now, currently.
Yeah, right.
So it gives the Avalanche a lot of flexibility on what they do. But with Ryan Johansen, you are very confident with what you get if he stays healthy.
Yeah. And, rumors are out there, and take those for what they're worth. Compher's looking for like 4.5, maybe a little bit more than that. And let's just say the Avs do sign him for that, and he slots into your 3C. They're paying their 3C more than they would be paying their second line center. What's on the books overall? Johansen's making more, obviously, but what the Avalanche are paying. And that just, to me, that's just an Avalanche move. Everything they did here is what they were looking for. And we kept saying, like, hey, they might, to bring in a 2C, maybe they have to part with someone like Sam Girard and maybe a younger, the prospect pool is already thin as it is, and they can give up draft picks. And we were kind of like throwing all these possibilities out there. And they gave up a player that is no guarantee is even going to be on the Nashville Predators. It's a brilliant move, and it makes your team better. And if nothing else happens, you've addressed one of the biggest needs, or the biggest need that you had going into the season, and you didn't even have to wait for free agency to open up. And that's the another thing we were saying, like, the free agent market is thin. You could have found somebody there if you wanted to. It's not like there's nobody available, but we kind of felt like to get a genuine guy that can really help you, you might have to go to the trade market. And the Avs jumped. They jumped on the, Johansen obviously was available, and they went and got him. And it's just another move that the Sakic and McFarland combination pulled in that has to impress you.
And the Avalanche literally paid $0 for confidence. that going into this next season, you have peace of mind and confidence knowing this was addressed. Everything else is not going to make or break the season. These are these moves that we talked about on the show. These like Abe Kubel, P.E. Belmar type moves that when you see them scroll across the bottom of your screen, you're not going to be like, oh, is that it? With Raijo, it's not it, but this is a good it to have.
I mean, he's a big body too, which always helps.
And he's 30.
Yeah, 6'3", about 215-ish. He's not going to get pushed around. You know, when you look at his career stats in terms of points, I think he's got like eight seasons over at least 50 points. 7 seasons over 60 points. That's right where you want second line center to be. His average time on ice is in the 16, 17, 18 range, depending on the year. It just makes sense. Everything about it makes sense.
You're talking about those point totals. That's split between Columbus and Nashville. Keep in mind.
Right. Yep. Which is going to be interesting to see what his number is going to be, because he's not going to be 92. And then someone reminded me he was 19 when he was on Columbus.
Yep.
That ain't going to happen.
Nope.
So as someone threw out a great idea, take 50. Take the number 50
that's a good one.
As what Nashville kept of your cap hit. That's a good one. I like that. So, but it's ugly. 50 is ugly out on the ice. And there's someone else that wears 50 that we don't like at all. So, we'll see what his number is going to be. But kudos to the Avs and Chris McFarland for pulling this thing off, because that makes you feel good going into the draft on Wednesday, and free agency starts soon after that. You started off good. I mean, you had the one trade earlier, but that was just a depth move, which, you know, the one move the big piece that you needed to make, the longer that went on, fans are going to be like, when are you going to address this? When are you going to address this? And they did right off.
Out of left field.
Yeah.
I don't think this was on anyone's radar.
Yep. So, all right. Let us hear from eBay Motors, and then we are going to get into the preseason schedule, which was also announced. So for a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. And it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. With eBay's guaranteed fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. So just add your ride to the My Garage tab and look for the green check to know that the part will fit, or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only, and exclusions apply. All right, the Avalanche did release their preseason schedule, and I know this gets a lot of people excited. Not really me, but the only thing that it gets me excited for is like, okay, at least we know the dates when Avalanche hockey returns in some capacity. If you're watching on YouTube, there it is. 6 games in total between 3 teams, September 24th and 25th. So back-to-back. There we go. Right off the bat, Kyle. We're doing a back-to-back in the preseason. They're both at home, Minnesota and then Vegas. And then September 28th in Minnesota, October 1st back home against Dallas. Skip a day, October 3rd in Dallas. Skip another day. Wraps up October 5th in Vegas. So that whole thing about me thinking, and I know preseason has nothing to do with the regular season, but playing Vegas twice in the preseason, in my head, it's just like, it kind of eliminates them opening up the season against Vegas. It still could happen, but you're playing them twice. Who knows? But it kind of takes the appeal away from it a little bit for me. But there's your preseason schedule.
You want me to tell you what really takes away the appeal from all of this? Watch the last 3 years before COVID. There was one in the last 2 years. These are the exact same opponents. Last year, the year before, and before COVID.
That's all they've played.
That is it.
I really don't pay attention to the preseason in terms of who they've
These
played
are the exact same
It's kinda funny.
opponents. And it's funny because Pittsburgh, the Penguins, announced their preseason schedule, and they're like, "Hey, everybody, we're going to Nova Scotia.
Yeah,
Isn't
that's
that
kinda
cool?"
cool. Yeah.
And all these teams get to do these cool little preseason games, or this is going here, this is going there. The exact same teams, the last 3 preseasons, and we get a back-to-back. I'm losing my luster for preseason. Usually I'm like salivating by this time. Like as soon as September rolls around, I'm like, bring on preseason hockey. And me and you are usually sitting here trying to find these streams. We're watching just random streams just to watch the game. And we're watching like Minnesota announcers.
Yeah.
And it
There's
loses its luster after the first period.
I completely forgot Minnesota was one of those teams until you just mentioned that. And I remember Minnesota posting, we're going to be streaming the game on our website. And that was the only way to watch it. And then that wasn't working. I get it. It's preseason, but it's never going to be like the NFL preseason where those are horrible games,
Yep.
NFL preseason, but the excitement around them is huge. So for me, it's like, for the first couple games, you're probably not going to get Nathan McKinnon in there and Cale Makar, and you might get them in the last couple games. Or maybe like the last 4 of them. Maybe they don't play in the first 2, but that's the thing. There's so much movement and getting like the guys who are on the verge in those games. And I like watching that stuff.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to see Nathan McKinnon in the preseason or Cale Makar in the preseason, not because I don't want them to get hurt. I'm going to watch them 82 times plus if they make the playoffs in the regular season. I want to see the young guys developing, see how they do. And it's just so difficult to try to find these games because, altitude doesn't carry them from time to time. Like the road games, they won't carry. Sometimes you get the game where it's like it's streaming, but you get the radio call while it's streaming, which fine. I'll take whatever. But it's just so difficult to find preseason games. And this is where we've talked about it so many times, Kyle, where the league just needs to do a better job of drumming up excitement. And when you make preseason, like those are your that's your, the first games, obviously, of the season that people will get it. People will get excited for these games, and to make it then impossible for people to watch it, they've already checked out.
And then another thing that we experienced last year, it was really rough for those buying tickets. You know what screams at me when I look at those first 2 dates? September 24th against Minnesota. September 25th against Vegas. It's not written on the screen, but it screams split squad. Remember when they did that last year?
Right.
It was flooding Twitter like, this is the squad we're getting here in Minnesota. We bought tickets for this game. Oh, I guess we'll see Gabe is going, or
whoever, right.
You get to see in Vegas the next night. You don't know who you're going to see because those rosters aren't posted. It's just who shows up.
Yeah.
That was another thing that you said that would drive me wild last year.
Yeah. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, the excitement comes from, okay, we have dates. We have dates that we know, and it's usually always around this time, but we know exactly when it's going to start, when it's going to end. And then a couple days after October 5th, our season is getting underway. So that's the exciting part for me. Yeah, sure. They're playing Minnesota and Dallas, division rivals, the hated Vegas Golden Knights, but it's not like you're going to be playing those games and with any bragging rights or anything like that if you beat them, because it's preseason. So I do like to see how these guys that get invited to camp, and as camp goes on and as these games go on, who are the guys that in that October 3rd game against Dallas and October 5th game against Vegas, who are the guys that, okay, like they're on the verge here. They got to have a good game to get, maybe avoid being cut or sent down. And that's where you watch and you're like, oh, let's watch these guys, see what they got. And even if they don't make it, then they come up and you say, hey, remember what they did in the preseason now? So that's the fun part for me in the preseason.
Yeah, these 6 games last year are where we fell in love with Martin Kaut, and these 2 games last year are where we hated Jordan Greenway for Minnesota.
Was it preseason? I mean, we've always really hated Jordan Greenway.
Oh, he gooned it up real big last year in preseason,
Yeah.
and I believe the year before too.
It doesn't surprise me. So, all right, well, there you go. There's your preseason, and should be getting the regular season relatively soon. I think we'll get through the draft, and then probably between that and free agency, around there, we'll get the regular season. So. All right. Last thing we wanted to get to today was last week, the NHL announced that those special warm-up jerseys that you see for Military Appreciation Night, for Hockey Fights Cancer, for Pride Day, or what are they? Hockey's for everyone. Hockey's for everyone night, and all the other ones that teams have. All of them they're doing away with, and this all stems specifically from the Pride Night one, right? Like. Nobody had any issues with Hockey Fights Cancer. Nobody had any issues with Military.
Indigenous People Night.
They have that one. Teams do ones outside of that. I know some teams. We were talking about Grateful Dead before we went live.
Yeah,
there's some teams that do Grateful Dead Night, and I think they have tie-dye jerseys and stuff like that. So all of this stems because there was a small number of players who just refused to go out during warm-ups for the Pride Night day, whatever day that the team held that. And obviously that's gonna affect people in a certain way, and the league basically said, hey, we're just gonna squash it all then. And that, I don't know, like that, to me, it's because those jerseys then usually go on auction and raise a lot of money for different causes. Teams will still have the nights. They'll still have Military Appreciation Night. They'll still have Hockey Fights Cancer. Still have Pride Night. Still have Grateful Dead Night. Whatever the night they want to have, and they can still make those jerseys to sell and auction off. They're just not going to be worn during warm-ups anymore. For number one, like, I wonder how much money you're going to raise, because those were the jerseys that came off their backs, and now they're not. So you're raising, for Cale Makar, you're getting thousands of dollars for that one. And our fans going to pony up that much money for one that he wasn't actually right? I doubt it. But I don't know. I kind of just feel like the NHL just turned tail and was like, well, we don't want to let's not offend the people who got offended, so let's kill it. And in the process, you offend the people who support it, rather than just telling the smaller percentage of people who didn't want to support this, just sit out. Then if you don't want to take part in it, just sit out. We're still going to do it because it's for good causes. And whether you agree with that or not, that's your prerogative to agree with that or not. That's the country that we live in. You don't have to do it. But for the NHL to just in one fell swoop just say we're getting rid of all of them, I just think that's a step backwards, if you ask me.
Yeah, you're talking about the NHL doing something that a dumb move. This is about as NHL of a move they could possibly do. I understand. It doesn't matter your feelings behind it. The conversation behind these jerseys, all of them were rooted in a place of sincerity and passion, and they were informing people about causes you didn't know mattered. Indigenous People Night, nobody knew that was a big thing until the stories started being told around it. Pride Night, you didn't know how many people it affected, both positive and negatively, and for what, until you heard the stories behind it. Until last year, the stories stopped being about the causes behind the jerseys and who was not participating in it. And that's where the stories started going haywire. And the NHL's like, well, if that's how it's going to be, nobody gets a jersey. So the NHL overacted, and I think it kind of lost its luster. Like, this even means like St. Louis, they always did their warm-up jerseys at the World Series. They'd always come out with like the Cardinals warm-up jerseys. So
there's a lot of them.
You're losing a lot. And I know in New Jersey they were having just artists contribute their designs and kind of showing off local art in New Jersey. You're losing all of that because somewhere along the way we got misguided in telling the stories and pointing out people who did and did not participate and why, and getting hostile with it.
Right. Yeah.
Losing the sight behind the message.
I know, like the people who didn't want to take part in Pride Night, like, don't. Like, I'm not gonna. If you don't support it, I don't want you out there, and that's for any of the specialty nights. I don't know why. Like, I'm not forcing someone to go do that. Then continue to sit out. I don't understand how it's like we're just gonna. And Gary Bettman, he was interviewed by Elliot Friedman, and he was like, they became a distraction.
Yeah,
they became a distraction because you let it.
Yeah.
Rather than just moving on, saying, fine, like, you have the rules in place of saying, like, if you don't want to do it, have the rules in place and say, like, you have to do a Pride Night, or you have to do a military appreciation night. And if nobody wants to take part in the warm-ups, they don't have to.
Yeah.
End of story. That's done. But now you've created more of a dust up, because now you've eliminated all of them. And all of those other ones are now suffering because you couldn't tell your players, your employees, either do it or don't do it. And the ones that don't do it, if they have to face something in the eyes of social media, then that's their choice. But some people are just going to sit there and be like, they don't want to do it. Fine. Look at all the people that do want to do it, and and pay attention to all the ones that are out there in warmups. And the other thing about it, man, is like, what other league does this of these special uniforms that are worn during warmups?
Yep.
I don't think any other league does it. I don't think, I know NFL doesn't do it. I don't watch a ton of NBA. I don't think they're out there in special warmups. Baseball wears like special hats and stuff like that on certain days.
Baseball's getting there.
Yeah, but like, this was a feature that was specific to hockey, and now it's gone because we don't want to. We want everybody to be kumbaya and everybody to be happy. And in doing this, you've pretty much done the opposite. Like, all of these things that you gave a voice to, and say, hey, like, we support you. Now you're saying, like, well, we're not going to support you that much because we don't want our players wearing the jersey. We're still going to do it. But you know what will change it, dude? Someone comes around and says, oh, I'll put an ad on there. I'll put an ad on a Pride Night jersey.
Yeah.
Guaranteed they're back out there, because that'll make the league money.
And let's not, all right, keyboard warriors, I hear you cranking up now. Let's not start belittling Pride Night, and this is the cause. Hey, the same players, when you're saying military appreciation, that falls differently on what militaries you're supporting when it comes to the broad scope of the NHL. You can't just say, go out there and support the military. That means different things to different players on different teams. Same thing for the Pride Night jerseys. And it became such a distraction on who's supporting and who's not, that the messages were lost to where teams like Minnesota was like, we're not even going to, like, I know the message is good, but the messages around this right now are just so negative. We're just not even going to participate. Minnesota pulled out. I believe it was Dallas, or the Rangers also.
The Rangers did. I think the Blackhawks did. There were a couple teams that did. Yeah.
It's doing everything opposite of what those nights were intended to be. So teams started pulling out, and NHL's like, we're just going to avoid this next year because nobody knows how to behave anymore. Thank you, social media. So I understand it also on that realm, in that regard, but you're losing so many good stories and so many good nights. Yeah. Once again, a wonderful opportunity for the league to do something different and unique. We can't even do that.
And like we said, like, they still get to have these nights. It's just that one feature, which was kind of one that a lot of people looked forward to, seeing the guys out there skating around in a different jersey for a little while. That part of it is gone. So maybe it comes back in the future in some capacity. If anybody can come to an agreement on how to do it, maybe it'll still be there, but who knows? We shall see. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. Fire away in the comment section for anything that was covered on today's episode. So we'll be back tomorrow with a fresh new episode. Maybe Saturday was busy. Sunday was kind of quiet. Maybe Monday, start of the work week, picks back up again with some moves. So we shall see. All right, that's going to wrap it up today, everybody. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast. We'll see you guys tomorrow.